Horror Fanatic here, and this month I'm going to talk about Killer Koala Bears from Another Dimension by P.A. Douglas. It's okay, but it does succeed in, I think, its intent, which is to feel like a B horror film. And in that regard, this film is an outstanding success. However, in the form of an enjoyable narrative, not so much. Killer Koala Bears from Another Dimension opens with the two primary characters, Joanna and Tim, stereotypical goth characters, teenagers, and they do feel very much like teenagers, and this does feel very much like teenager love, so in that regards, well done, P.A. Douglas. Wanting to leave town, but unable to afford a bus ticket, or a car, or a job to save up to move, or going away to college, they resort to the dark arts, throwing rocks in a field behind a guy's house, which actually works and opens up portals. Now, only Tim thinks it'll work, and Joanna is just along for the ride with her boyfriend. These portals spew forth the Akaratos, a koala bear human hybrid of stoned tools technology level, and they set to wreak havoc across the setting of the town of Lewisburg, West Virginia, which feels like a very generic backdrop. There was nothing in the city that made it feel unique or stand out, which I guess works if you're trying to make this feel like the any American town. As the Keratos creatures pour through portals, springing up all over town, an orange barrier drops over the city, trapping everyone inside. So, things instantly go haywire in this book, and people just get straight up slaughtered by these koala bears as the attack happens at night and from seemingly nowhere. In the regards of all of that, it is very well done. The scenes involving the Keratos attacking and savaging the town is actually all of the highlights of the book. My favorite two chapters is one involving a woman who gets attacked and murdered in front of her children as they hide under a bed, and the other is the police chief Grimes in his valiant last stand with the armed citizens of the town against the insurmountable Keratos horde and their new on the rival scene elephant men that show up for some reason. All of that is a lot of fun to read. Unfortunately, there's a lot of bad character drama thrown in there. Really just all over the angsty teenagers. And it really drags down the quality of the novel. Another thing that grinds my gears about this novel is it never explores the Akaratos themselves. They're shown to be using spears and slings and stone tool era weaponry. They wear clothing and are adored with jewelry, and they speak in a language that no one can seem to understand. That's all we get to know about them, even though one of the other primary characters, Mrs. Yortsdale, who doesn't show up until page 169, knows anything about them. They're just a thing out there in the multiverse that are run into often enough that they're remembered. I have to say, though, my favorite character in the novel is most certainly Outlaw, as he feels like the character who's got his shit the most together, and sadly he's only in it for a short window. This book likes to pick up characters, give them a name, and then or an identifying trait to just kill them off rather quickly. The book has a very high body count, much like a B horror film would of the same nature, which is by no means a bad thing. It's just it loses its effect after a while, much like the gore in the book does. The book has some very good gore scenes, but by the end, it feels old hat. Now, for those who want to read this book, because I do recommend that if you want to have a light read that isn't challenging, and feels like a B horror sci-fi flick, then definitely pick this up and stop here, because the ending, there is some fuckery, and I'm going to talk about it. And now, actually, right now. In the conclusion of the book, it is down to just 3 survivors. Frank, Joanna, and Tim, as they reach Mrs. Yorkdale's house. Frank has been frantically trying to find his girlfriend Kathy the whole book, and that has been his character's sole driving factor. When they reach the old woman's house, she's aware that shit's going down, but things seem peaceful and at ease, and no one is being murdered on her street. She does some magic mumbo-jumbo with a rock, forcing back an orange glow that has permeated the land since the arrival of the Arcaratos. And inside, gives a ham-handed explanation about what's going on, and that rocks be magic, yo. It is really depressing when she's revealed to be this grand architect that's caused all of this happen to run away with Frank's girlfriend after body swapping with him. As Kathy's whole characterization is locked up within Frank's perspective, you never see this coming, and as Mrs. Yorkdale as a character doesn't show up until the last 30 pages of the book, it feels jarring and just out of nowhere. There's no hints or subtle suggestions that is something that's happens. He mentions them going to see her a couple of times, and that his girlfriend believed in this mumbo jumbo more than he did, but it's not like he wasn't supportive about it. So that couldn't have been, because he went with her willingly a number of times. And she somehow, what you would think, as far as a character would go, So the book concludes with Mrs. Yorkdale slitting her throat and then casting a spell to swap bodies with Frank. Frank dies while seeing himself in her body, and then Mrs. Yorkdale, in the Frank suit, pieces out magically and leaves Tim and Joanna to die after discovering that they do truly love each other over them just pettily squabbling and dying kissing as the Akaratos tear down the house and kill everyone. Mrs. Yorkdale's betrayal and the revelation of this grand design isn't revealed until the last 4 pages. And it just feels like stuff's missing out of this book. It feels like a badly butchered film that was heavily censored, and they had to leave out just a ton of key scenes. So my overall thoughts on Killer Koala Bears from Another Dimension is it's okay. It was never not entertaining, and that's first and foremost what reading should be, is entertainment. It should be fun. And P.A. Douglas does a great job at crafting a fun story. It feels rocky, though, and it feels rushed. And the ending is ham-handed and uneven. But it's still worth reading. And with it only being 196 pages, it would be a great way to kill a lazy Sunday afternoon if you're the sort of person who reads an entire book in a single sitting. And that's all for Killer Koala Bears from Another Dimension by P.A. Douglas. I'll be back again next week with another novel. I don't know what, though, so if you have any suggestions, post them down in the comments down below. And I'll see you next month.